What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Q&A, where I take your questions from all over the internet and answer them here. And let's just jump right into it. And our first question comes from Hanson's Rough Riders, who says, since it's clearly obvious that the offensive line is a disaster, do you think Freddie is going to give up on routes that take forever to develop and go to a short 5 to 10 yard quick release pass game? I just don't think that's possible, quite frankly. I mean, they spent months since May learning this system, and this system, part of Todd Monken's air raid and Freddie Kitchens' system, is stretching the ball downfield vertically. So that part of it is not going to go away. They can put some Band-Aids on it. They can throw some more screens. They can throw shorter passes, sure. But the playbook is going to be the playbook, and they can't really change that too much from it. They can't completely change the identity of this offense just because they don't have a great offensive line. So while in theory that would be great, it's just something I don't think is really possible for the Browns to do at this point of where they are in the season. But good question. The next question comes from the kid from Cleveland, who says, when did Jannard Avery fall off the face of the earth? This is interesting. I think it happened somewhere between OTAs and training camp, because since he's gotten back off of injury in training camp, he has been in a doghouse with this coaching staff. Something he did during that time period must have rubbed the coaching staff the wrong way. Jannard Avery, I have no idea what has happened with Jannard Avery and why he doesn't get playing time, and if it has to do with him being in a doghouse of any kind, because he is a good player. But it is kind of frustrating to see a talent like Jannard Avery not be utilized when we could probably utilize him more than he is, just doing nothing on the team. The next question comes from Trey Harding, who says, I know it's still early, but if things don't get better by midseason, what do you think might happen? Maybe a new left tackle via trade, or Freddie's job, or the OC? I put this question up here to make this point. We can't just blow it up this year just because the Browns don't look like a Super Bowl contender. We can't do that. We have to let the season play out, and we have to let this thing develop and grow. If our issues were at the beginning of the season that this team did not have any chemistry and they needed to grow together, what are our complaints going to be next season if we have a new head coach, if we have a new offensive coordinator, if we got rid of everybody? Then we're just going to be going through the same process year after year, and before you know it, you've blown your window. So we have to have some patience here. We have to get through these growing pains, and we have to do this with the understanding that we can't just fire Freddie Kitchens because it looks bad this year. We can't just fire Todd Monken because it looked bad this year. We're going to have to stick with these guys because ultimately I think that's what's best for the organization is consistency at the coaching position. But that's a very good question that you asked there, Trey. The next question comes from Kevin Durant's burner account, who says, are we screwed this Sunday, Quincy? Are we bound to just never beat playoff teams that aren't Baltimore? No. I think there's a lot of playoff teams that the Browns can beat. Here's the thing, though. The Browns beat the Baltimore Ravens because they matched up really well with the Ravens. They were able to run the ball. They were able to get the ball downfield. And more importantly, they were able to get protection against the Baltimore Ravens because Baltimore, most of their strength on their defensive line, interior. Most of the Browns' strength on the offensive line, interior. And where Baltimore struggles is with the edge, and same deal with the Browns. So that way it masks some of the issues on the Browns' offensive line. One of the reasons why the Browns look so bad against San Francisco is because San Francisco is so long and so versatile and so athletic on their defensive line that they're able to kind of scheme things up in a way that take advantage of the tackles because they're one of the few teams in the NFL that can do things like that. Now with the Seattle Seahawks, it's a different monster because on paper, Ezekiel Ansah and Jadeveon Clowney are absolute monsters. But but they've not produced. They've both only had a sack each apiece. The Seahawks have about 10 sacks as a team. It just doesn't look like the production is there on the edges for them. Now, they're a very good run defending team with Jadeveon Clowney. You ought to be, because that's what he does really well. But they have not gotten to the passers. So this is one of those things where I can see how it goes bad for the Browns this week. I can see how it goes good for them. And we're just going to have to be patient with that. But good question. Next question comes from Marquise, who says, what do you think of the OBJ trade rumors? And should the Browns come up with a trade for Trent Williams? No, the Browns should not trade for Trent Williams. I understand that there is a sense of urgency, and some people expect this team to make the Super Bowl this year, and it could happen. It's a possibility. I still think this team is a playoff team, and I still think this team has a lot of growing to do, obviously, as San Francisco showed us. But I don't think the move is to trade for an older left tackle who, quite frankly, is a question mark at this point of his career. He's older. He has not played all season. He has not practiced all season. He has not practiced all camp. So bringing him in with 2 first-round picks or a first-round pick for a guy that old and that big of a question mark, I think is a bad deal. I don't think it solves your problem at left tackle. Honestly, he's going to have 2 weeks before he's ready to be on the field, and then 2 more weeks until he's ready to play at the level that he should be able to play at. I don't think it's a worthwhile trade. I understand it's a quick fix in some people's minds. Well, this guy hasn't played football all offseason. So he's not going to be ready because the Browns traded for him. So no, I don't think trading for Trent Williams is a solution that is going to bode anything. So if you're the Browns, you just got to find a way to figure it out internally. And I think the solution is to use one of your first-round picks, well, your only first-round pick this year, to find a solution at left tackle. We can mix and match at right tackle and right guard all we want. I'm fine with that. But we need an anchor at left tackle. It's self-evident. It's very evident at this point. But the next question comes from Giants Nation, who thinks I've been dodging him lately, but really his questions have just been weak sauce. But Giants Nation says, hey, brother, why are you ignoring me? Because your questions were just weak, man. No, I'm just playing. But my question to you is, what do you think of Jim Brown? Do you think he is underrated as one of the best running backs of all time? I heard Barry Sanders. I've heard about Emmitt Smith, but never Jim Brown. What are your thoughts and opinions? Really? You've never heard? That's interesting to me because I don't know if it's just growing up in Cleveland, but I've always heard that Jim Brown's one of the best 2-3 players of all time, like football players, not even just running backs. I like here in Cleveland, it's common knowledge that Jim Brown is the best running back of all time, and it's said like that. And among older people who like my dad who watched the NFL back in the day, or even my grandma who watched the NFL back in the day, always rave about how Jim Brown was that guy, the greatest of his generation, the original Michael Jordan of the NFL. So it's interesting to hear that you don't think that is the case. But my perspective of it, lifelong Browns fan, Jim Brown's always been appreciated and acknowledged as the greatest of all time. And, you know, honestly, even from national media sources, I've always found that to be kind of a consensus base, that he is one of the best players of all time, if not of all time, and one of the best running backs of all time. But interesting. The next question comes from Julius Jamison, who says, when Hollywood comes back, do you think Callaway should be benched? When Hollywood comes back, Callaway should be benched this week. In all seriousness, he should not be on the field. He did not know where to line up. He false started in the goal line, and then he caused that interception that completely blew open that game. Callaway, I don't know if football does plus minuses, but his is historic for that game. He had to have a minus like a million for his performance against the 49ers. So he should be benched off of that alone. I don't want to see much more of Callaway because right now he doesn't look like a guy who's focused. He doesn't look like a guy who, quite frankly, cares about what he does on the field. And he looks like a dude who's coasted by on talent. And it doesn't seem like he's taking his craft seriously, and it shows itself in how his mistakes consistently hurt the team. So, no, I don't think Callaway should be on the field, whether Hollywood Higgins is back or not. And maybe I'm just bitter, but that's just my opinion on it. The next question is from Ethan Holloway, who says, is Trent Williams a viable trade option? No. What can the Browns do to fix this offensive line immediately? Why have the Browns consistently given up yards due to lazy penalties? And does it concern you that Steve Wilks had seen the 49ers scheme for 2 other times in game situations, but was unable to put a plan together? All right, so here's the thing about the Kyle Shanahan offense, though. Everybody can put up a good game plan against that offense. It's really dependent on how your secondary and your linebackers defend it on the field. It's really up to them. And that's what the Kyle Shanahan system takes advantage of. It takes advantage of bad communication on defense, and the Browns had terrible communication on defense, and they got lit up. There's not really a lot of blame that I can throw on Steve Wilks because blitzing would have been a terrible idea. What he had to do was kind of lead the Browns in man and some soft zone looks and hope that his players on the field made the right decision, because that's why Kyle Shanahan's system is as successful as the way he is, because he knows how to scheme it up in a way that puts the onus on the players on the field, not what the game plan is coming in. So, I have to give that dub to Kyle Shanahan. I'm not really going to fault Steve Wilks for that. The other part of your question is, what can the Browns do to fix this offensive line immediately? Oh, man. It's really a personnel issue. I think they could a more block-focused tight end to keep in there sometimes. I saw Farrell Brown struggle blocking in line. You can't really switch anybody out. Maybe you could put Wyatt Teller in there, but I don't think Cush has been the problem at guard. I think it's really been your two tackles, and you got no solution behind that. So immediately, it's just you're going to have to hope they play better and maybe sign a tight end who can block better to help them. But, that situation is what it's going to be, and we're just going to need those players to step up, honestly, for the time being. The next question is from Shane Kohler, who says, I keep asking and you never read mine. Joke's on you. I read every question that is sent in to me. I can't answer every question on video because these videos would be like an hour long because I talk too much, but I do read every question. Every question is considered up to 2 days after I post. I normally put it up a day or two before I post the video or start to make the video. So if you ask within 24 hours of me posting, more than likely, I'm going to read your questions. So you are wrong. I've read your questions before. This next question is from the Catster, who says, do you think the Browns will be able to figure out their struggles and still fight for a playoff spot with the weaker second half schedule? Oh, yeah. I think the Browns have a great chance to make the playoffs still. I think especially if they can get a win against Seattle, they're really in a great position to make the playoffs. If they can have 3 or 4 wins going into after New England, they're really in good position. And I say that because they're going to play a lighter schedule. Obviously, they're going to have some easier games. They're going to be able to have some time to get it together. They're also going to get some players back. Greedy Williams, Denzel Ward, Rashard Higgins, hopefully. And then obviously Kareem Hunt is going to join the fray here. And they're going to have some time to figure it out on offense and what they can and can't do well. And they're going to be able to form a bit more of an identity when the schedule isn't as chaotic. They're not playing one national TV game, then one 1 o'clock game, then another national TV game on Monday. The schedule's been chaotic for them. They've gone West Coast, East Coast multiple times. So, for the Browns, I think this is good that they can. I think it's going to be good for a multitude of reasons, a lot logistical, also a lot just statistical. They have won their toughest division game, we would assume, already, and they are still in position to win a lot of games. So don't give up on the Browns. They can still do something a Browns team hasn't done in years, which is make the playoffs. And potentially even have a home playoff game. That is still very possible. I just think in order to hit that next level that we want this team to hit, they have to have left and right tackle figured out on some level, and whether that is those two players stepping up and playing better, which they've done in the past, or if it's those players just being replaced. But I think that's what it's going to take for this Browns team to take the next step. The next question comes from Christina Stefanik, who says, the Browns are the second most penalized team in the league now. The Falcons have one more penalty than the Brownies. Football Database says enforced penalties, so not including decline offsetting. Good for clarification. I would love to get your analysis on this as it relates to the causes specifically and what you think coaches can do proactively in Berea to at least improve in this area. I think the fact that a team passed the Browns in most penalized is proof enough that they're actually doing a lot to reduce those penalties. I know we focus on those penalties a lot, but we have to kind of consider that that's because they had that 18 penalty game. And that kind of blew the roof off of that number and gave the Browns kind of a handicap to lead the league in that statistic for a while. But, you know, recently, I don't think the penalties have been their problem. Like, I really don't think that in any game other than Tennessee, the penalties were a problem for the Browns. So I think that's actually been handled pretty well from the coaching staff, in my opinion, from what I've seen in the reduction in that. Like, again, the Browns started off the season with 18 penalties. The fact that a team has already surpassed them in penalties says a lot about what this team has done to keep the penalties down after week 1. All right, guys, but that is all the questions that I have. Thank you guys for asking all the questions. I love reading through all of them. I wish I could answer them all on video. I do answer some more sometimes on Twitter. I just get into it with guys. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, don't feel free to do that. But thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.